Good evening and welcome to Thursday Therapy. My name is Carlos Bing and I am one of the hosts for this evening. As you know, mental health has been a priority for Faith Ministries Church for quite some time. And we started these conversations a while ago with a series that we had at the church. If you all remember, we had sessions after service a couple years back. And then we moved the after church meeting to a virtual format that will now take place every third Thursday. And so I guess what I'd like to do first is to kind of introduce myself and talk a little bit about what I do. And so I have two roles. One role is with the state of Ohio as the state director of a college access program to get more students into college. And then I also serve as a licensed professional counselor for key counseling and consultation. And I have along with me my lovely wife.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us. My name is Seneca Bing, and in my daytime job, I am a family and community engagement coordinator in Columbus City Schools, but I am also a licensed school counselor. And so I'd like to say the conversation that we're going to have this evening, we approach it with a dual lens because we are both helpers. We're in the helping field, and we love helping people to get through challenging times, if you could love that, right? But we also have been the beneficiaries of a village of people who have helped us through our times. And so, as you'll know, tonight we will be talking about treading the deep waters of grief. And so that's enough about us. What do we have on deck for tonight?
What are we talking about tonight? Well, we're going to start with a video that tells a story about what we all experienced during 2020. We had a very tough time in 2020, but then the video also ends with a little bit of hope that we'd like for you all to see. And then after the video is shown, we're going to introduce our panelists and get into our conversation about treading the deep waters of grief with our two special guests. And then we'll end the day with a 1-minute mindfulness activity that you can use as a takeaway. So let's go ahead and jump into the video, and we'll start with that. I got.
From the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states. We will rise from the sun-baked South. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover in every known nook of our nation, in every corner called our country. Our people, diverse and beautiful, will emerge battered and beautiful. When day comes, we step out of the shade of flame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it. For there is always light if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it.
Came through quite a bit in 2020. It was a interesting year, to say the least. With today being March 18th, a year ago this time, the country shut down, and we've been in this position for a year. And so it's important to acknowledge the things that we've been a part of and the things that we've been through, and just to realize that it's been a lot. And then just to also recognize that we all come to this place from a different lens, and that some of us may be harmed a little more than others based on what we've all been through. And so it's just important to acknowledge how you're feeling. You've probably heard the famous phrase, it's okay to not be okay. It's important to acknowledge where you are in this moment.
Yes, and that video, it brings back so many memories of what we've gone through and what we've been through. But one of the most important things that I take away from that video was that Amanda Gorman talked about seeing the light and being the light in those spaces. And even though we've gone through such a hard time, we can definitely be the light and end on a bit of some optimism. And so moving into 2021, we are hopeful that these conversations that we have will give us an opportunity to heal as a community and to really start to be the light and to see the light. All right, so again, tonight our topic is going to be treading the deep waters of grief, and we are going to highlight one of the ministries that we have at Faith Ministries Church that really walks alongside people who are going through the grieving process or the grieving journey.
Yes, so at this time, we would like to welcome Reverend Cassandra Wilson and Sister Charlotte Carter from the Grief Relief Ministry. Thank you both for joining us tonight.
Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
So to start this conversation off tonight, we'd like for you both to talk a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became involved with the Grief Relief Ministry. And Sister Carter, we'll start with you.
Well, about myself, I'm a retired principal from Columbus City Schools. I also had an extensive career in juvenile corrections with the Ohio Department of Youth Services. I'm licensed in the state of Ohio as a K-8 teacher, high school English teacher, high school principal, and local school superintendent. I'm a charter member of Faith Ministries Church, a lifetime member of the Ohio State University Alumni Association, a lifetime member of Rosenwald Harlenites Incorporated, and I'm a Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated Dove. I'm a proud mother and grandmother. As I said, I'm an administrator and have retired as administrator, but I'm a lifelong learner and teacher. I was drawn to the ministry by Pastor Wise. We had a tragedy in our family, and about a year later, Pastor approached me and told me that the Grief Relief Ministry was starting to fizzle, and he needed for me to work with him to help revive it. And he also approached Connie West. So she and I were the original co-ministry leaders for the current version of our grief relief program at Faith Ministries. I've been doing that and wearing that hat for 15 years. I've had a couple of other people who stepped up and came to our assistance so that we could continue to work on what we felt God intended us to do. And 4 years ago, Sister Cassandra Wilson came on board, and a year ago, Angeline Sizemore came on board. So the three of us are the current co-ministers and co-leaders for that ministry. Cass?
And I'm Cassandra Wilson, and I am manager of spiritual care services for the Mount Carmel Healthcare System. I am also a chaplain by trade. I have been doing chaplaincy for over 10 years. And I am also a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, where I'm a Diamond Life member. I have been privileged to work with our grief relief ministry for 4 years. And like Charlotte, I came on board, and once I became a member of the Church of Faith, then, Pastor gave me this wonderful opportunity to join a ministry that needed additional support, but mostly that I could use my skills and the things that I do in the hospital setting to support our church members and those throughout the community that will come forward saying, I'm dealing with a lot of pain, a lot of hurt with grief. And of course, we've also experienced grief in our own home and family. And so it was easy to connect with this ministry and what it means to serve. So I am so pleased to be able to work with Sister Charlotte, with Sister Angeline, and to serve in this capacity.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies, for being with us this evening. And so I would be remiss to say, since we have most of the sororities represented, that I'm a proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Before we get deep into our questions, I just wanted to throw that out.
All right, all right. Greek love.
So in all seriousness, so we're in the midst of this pandemic, and the social unrest is there. There's political divisiveness and all of these things that are taking place. You saw the video, and it took us through kind of a storyline along that. Can you share some reflections that you have in regards to the video, or just what's going on now? And I'm
Well, let me
sorry,
start by saying, working in the hospital system, I've been up close and personal with COVID-19 and what it meant to go through the challenge of not even understanding the disease, not understanding what it means to our workers there, and how to prepare yourself for it. Everything from the PPE, which, we didn't know what to wear initially. And so you start with a mask and then the gown up. And is that enough to protect you from picking up that disease? But also learning how to be compassionate and caring and be on the journey with people who are isolated because we no longer had visitors coming in. It was challenging all the way around for people to try to understand how to live in an environment where we don't understand. And it's kind of amazing to have gone a year and now have the vaccine where people can find hope and help and can see themselves moving forward to the future. So to go from being isolated to being able to get back together, to be able to think about it, an amazing, amazing year.
Thank you.
And my perspective on the issue is that Reverend Cass and I actually had an advantage. We had already garnered a lot of support from our church. We had learned a great deal from the Grief Share support group that we operated. We already embraced the people who were facing difficult challenges. So the pandemic brought in another level, but at least we were prepared and we shifted gears, changed how we offered our service, and we're really proud of what we've accomplished. And our group participants are very supportive and very grateful for what they've been able to receive during this pandemic.
Thank you for that, Sister Carter and Reverend Cass. It's interesting because, again, you allude to we've been through a lot with this past year, and that you were prepared for the unknown. As Reverend Cass said, it's like, getting the PPE and not knowing if you were going to get those germs on you and how that was going to feel or what that would do to you. When you think about all that together and all that you've been through, and you think about grief, like, how do you define grief? Is Sister Carla?
Is that okay? Okay, I consider grief, and I shouldn't just say in my terms. I've learned from Cass, I've learned from our materials, I've learned from our participants, and I've also done research. Grief is a public health issue. Grief can be a debilitating experience, but we have the capacity to survive it. As we're working with our group members, we frequently refer to it as a grief journey. It's a reaction to loss, but contrary to the common belief that it's just emotions that are apparent when a person suffers a loss, grief is much more than that. It affects us on numerous levels. The psychological level, which of course is our mental health and our emotional level. Our physiological level, which is how it affects our body, our heart functions, our immunity system functions, our ability to adapt, the way that our brain actually works and has to work when we're grieving. And on the sociological level, it impacts how we interact with people, how we view and complete the roles that we normally play in our environment. So we can face a lot more challenges than what's visible on the surface. And of course, it affects our spiritual stability, our spiritual functions, our beliefs in God, our relationship with God, and how we use what we know from the Holy Word to help us face the challenges.
Yes, thank you for that. Reverend Cass, did you have anything that you wanted to add, or want to give you a
I
chance if you'd
think
like?
when what Sister Charlotte helped us understand is that it's just bigger than the traditional definition of an emotional reaction. It is so much bigger, which is why when we are working with individuals to talk about grief, we really try to focus on more than the traditional models of grief, like the 5 stages or the 4 stages of grief. We really try to look at grief as a meaning centered kind of model where we are addressing not something that's linear, like first you feel this and then you feel that, but recognizing that those emotions are cyclical, that you initially may start out angry and then you might move to bargaining, but quite frankly, you might go back to being angry again. That's just, we don't
Mhm.
always stay in the same stage. And our feelings kind of go from today I feel okay, but tomorrow I'm down. I can't get out of the bed. I am hurting. And then maybe the next day I'm extremely angry with God and everybody else. And then I might go and pray and feel so much better, connect with family and feel like, okay, life is worth living, only tomorrow to feel that same pain again as if it just happened. And so we recognize that grief is not just a process that you go step by step and then you're out of it. But it's a continual phase of emotions, of turmoil, as you process through to try to get to a place that you experience a new normal, where life is not going to ever be what it was, but it can be something new that you can live with and be okay with.
Mhm. I appreciate you bringing up that we hear a lot about Kubler-Ross and the stages of grief and it being this linear thing, but I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate you saying that it's not that. It ebbs and it flows.
No.
I read something that said grief is like riding a wave. You just never know when it's going to be
Mm-hmm.
real still or smooth or when it's going
Mm-hmm.
to come crashing down. But that could happen
Right.
at any moment. So I appreciate you bringing that up so that people don't feel that grief has to happen in a certain way. And the other thing that we talk about with children is developmentally they're in different places. So when children grieve, they may grieve a certain way at one age, and when they start to understand and learn the world a little different, that grief may come back in a different form. So I appreciate you bringing that piece up. Okay. Mm-hmm.
And it's
So,
normal. All of them, they're normal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes.
and Reverend Cass, when you talk about normal, it's, and I'll shoot this question to Sister Carter first, but you mentioned normal. And I think a lot of times people will say, well, this is the way it's supposed to be when you grieve. And if you operate outside of that, what they believe is their normal trajectory, they look at you kind of crazy, or they make you feel crazy. And so this question is kind of sarcastic, but it's a real question, because I want to know how you would respond to this, because I'm sure people have asked you. And so, Sister Carter, I want to give this to you first, but Reverend Cass, I'd like to hear your perspective too. What is an appropriate response to grief?
Well, I'm kind of in your shoes, Carlos. I get stuck on that word appropriate because it has a judgmental component to it. And grief behaviors are not solid, they're not constant, they're fluid. And the range of intensity is so great that it's almost impossible to say this is appropriate and this is inappropriate. Each of us is unique. And in that uniqueness are combinations and concentrations of everything that God created each individual to be. So my grief response is my grief response, and yours is yours. Both appropriate, both valid, but our responses sometimes must be managed so that we don't find ourselves on a dead end journey and end up behaving in a way that represents being stuck in grief. And much more importantly, we never want to let that pain put us in the position where we're contemplating or planning to end our lives by suicide or end the life or lives of someone else that we hold responsible for the grief that we're suffering.
I'm glad you shared that, Sister Charlotte, because it is true. Our responses to grief have everything to do with our relationship with the person who passed away, the person who we loved or didn't love, or however that process goes for you. It does absolutely contribute to how you respond to grief. And therefore, we look at grief as a journey from that initial point when your body receives the shock of loss, and all the ways that you continue to respond to that loss. And over time, it changes, but you're still responding. So we call it a journey. And we don't put an exact time frame on it, like you have to respond like this. We don't even tell you how you have to respond. Sometimes people look at you and say, "You're not crying. Aren't you supposed to cry?" Well, it depends. I mean, if you journeyed with someone for years and years and saw them get closer and closer, you might be praising the Lord that He finally gave that person their wings. And on the other hand, if you sit and watch a car accident and the outcome of that accident is that you lose someone dear, your response is going to be immediate but different. And it may take different lengths of time and feelings and emotion and support to move through grieving. And let me just plug that it's nothing wrong with getting support as you're moving through grieving.
Cass, can you just summarize some of the responses that we see in our ministry and that you see on your job? What types of
Responses to grief? Of course, there's that shock. Then there is an outpouring. I've seen people hit walls. I mean, that fist go as close to the wall, and that's a solid, then they can't get through it, but they certainly try. And then I've seen people absolutely stoic. No, nothing on their face. You don't see anything. They're stoic because they're processing differently. Of course, a lot of tears, a lot of calling out, a lot of response. Why God? Why me? Why now? And a lot of acceptance. That I'm just so grateful that my loved one is no longer suffering. So grateful. So the responses are as wide as they can be. And our moving through that process just depends on how we operate as an individual. Some people want to do something. So they'll start finding the funeral home, they'll start organizing the family. And then some people want to just lay on a shoulder and cry. And that's what I'm saying. They're all normal responses to a tremendously abnormal situation, the loss of a loved one.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for that. And so you talked a little bit about the history of the Grief Relief Ministry. And so can you take us through an experience for someone who would be a part of your ministry?
Well, let's
I'm
talk
sorry.
about
Go ahead, Cass.
what we did with Grief Relief prior to the pandemic. We had a 13-week program at our church, at Faith Ministries, where we would come in and we had a lesson plan using Grief Share, which is a plan that's available that you can access some information online. But we had a program that we used for 13 weeks. And at the end of the 13 weeks, we would give our students the opportunity to continue with us, or if they felt like their needs were met, they could say, "Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I'll tell others about it." And they can conclude their membership in the program. We have some people who've been with us for years, and others who did the first 13 weeks and they felt like this was enough to help them move forward. You can start any week, so that it was not a plan where you had to start on the first week. You could come at any time, enter in, stay as long as you needed that ministry, and then conclude. And now we're doing something different. We're doing Faith AC, or Faith After Church, and using the format that Pastor has provided for us. But the sermon format really still contributes so much to our discussion around talking about grief and how we see both hope and help in the midst of challenge. And so the sermon series really has helped our group through conference calls to still support one another while we're going through this pandemic.
Thank you.
Sister Carter, anything you'd like to add on that question?
Well, I like the fact that even though we were a little anxious when we started the current format, I really like the fact that we built off of Pastor's sermon, and he provides an outline that gives us guidance and direction on our discussion. And I can't stress enough how important it is for someone who's grieving to be able to talk. And many times they contribute ideas, suggestions, scripture, songs that help other members of the group. And in the last year, helped me and Cass because we had
Mm-hmm.
losses that were very personal and deep for us. And people, there are so many times when we find ourselves making one another laugh. When people think about a grief ministry, they think that it's all sadness and all people talking about doom and gloom. But the Lord fixes it where the scripture, the pastor's message, the ideas and expertise that Cass and I are able to exhibit, the input of our participants, all of it comes out just right, just the way the Lord intended it. And we like that.
Yes.
I like hearing that. I like hearing that because obviously, like, right, when people think of grief share, they think of at least the clients I talk to, and I'm sure people that you've run into, they automatically assume it's going to be this doom and gloom conversation, and one that it's just going to be sad the whole time. So I'm glad to hear that even in the midst of that sadness and that grief, that you share that there's some laughter in there too, which is definitely needed. I'll pose this question to both of you, and I'll ask you first, Sister Carter. Um, when there are individuals that we know who you look at and you'll say, "Man, this person needs to go see somebody. They need to go talk to somebody." How would you recommend that the average person support someone that may be reluctant to seek support, either from a group or from an individual therapist?
I think it's most critical to support them with love. If you let yourself be guided by love, you'll make the right decisions. You won't be judgmental. You won't say to that person, well, you should be over this by now, because you love them too much to say something that's hurtful. You'll encourage them to talk. You'll encourage them to accompany you to something that's uplifting. You'll offer to come with them to the Grief Share support group program, whether it be in person or on the phone. Um, Sometimes people just need to know that somebody cares. That's the most important part of the journey. And of course, with Grief Share, which is a Christianity based support program, those resources interweave the Lord's Word throughout every lesson. We pray before every session, we pray at the end of every session. And this thing we really miss, we hug at the end of every in person session. So now we just verbally say happy things to one another because we really become like a family. We have friends in Alaska that we met through Grief Share. We have an open invitation to visit our Grief Share support group members and family members. And so it's all based on love. And that's what Jesus told us to do, to love one another.
Sometimes we get concerned because we say, I don't know what to say. I can see your pain. I can see that you're having a difficult time at work. I can see that you're having a difficult time connecting. I just don't know what to say. It's amazing how sometimes telling a person, I don't know what to say, but I care about you more than anything else. I just want to be there for you, available to you. I don't exactly know what you need me to do, but tell me, is there anything I can do? And people know when you're sincere versus when those are just rote kinds of words. And you let them know, I am here for you. If there's something I can do to support you, let me do that. It doesn't have to be big, and let them know I'm praying for you, that I care about you. I'm just here for you. I recognize this is hard. And if you ever just want to talk, we can set aside over here and have a cup of coffee and just talk about what you're going through because it's difficult. And one of the best things you give people is your presence, which in essence, you bring the presence of God to where they are even when you don't have much other than that. And as Sister Carter said, kindness, loving kindness. And that's a good start. It's a good start. And you don't have to let them know I'm praying for you, but pray for them. That God would bring them that openness so that they can share their pain. And if you can't get to them, then honestly, it's okay to say, I know a support group that might be able to help you, or even say, this might be a time for you to get some professional counseling, and there's nothing wrong with that. To get someone who understands what you're feeling and give you some personal time to process what you're feeling.
I'm gonna jump in real quick, Reverend Cass and Sister Carter. What you just said really hit me because I almost thought about like when I joined Faith Ministries, which was probably 15 years ago, and I remember how terrified I was to walk down to the front of the church, and so I didn't. I actually snuck to the back and met with Brother Robbie instead of walking down to the front because I was so nervous. But Dr. Wise often talks about, look to your left, look to your right. If someone doesn't have their hand raised, ask them if they'd like you to walk them down. And I thought about that when you said, like, sometimes you just need to let someone know, I'll walk with you through that journey. I'll be there with you to get you to where you want to go, serve as that bridge. So I just appreciated y'all both saying that. I know Cindy has a question, but I wanted to throw that in there really quickly.
No, that's fine. The other thing that I will add just really quick is not avoiding people because they've had a loss, because that is also hard. I love that you said to say, you may not know what to say, right? Tell someone you don't know what to say, but don't avoid them altogether, because then that also, brings up different things. So we are going to talk about time in terms of time to grieve. So my question is, what do you say to people when you hear them say that, your time to grieve is over, or you should just move on, or you've been grieving too long, or what have you? And I'll give that question to Sister Carter.
Well, people who know me know that sometimes I can be a little blunt. When it comes to that particular issue, I think it, but I try to find a diplomatic way to say it. But to me, that's not someone else's call to make. I think that it is important to observe your loved one. I think it's important to provide support and to look for signs of progress. Sometimes we make the mistake of only focusing on what this person is still struggling with. But what new thing are they able to accomplish that they weren't able to do 3 weeks ago? That what you're looking at may be part of their new normal. They may be quieter for a long time, but that doesn't mean they haven't made progress. You have to look at the big picture. And when you tell someone that they should have done this or that by a certain time, you're not being fair. And when the time comes, and it will come, when you're grieving, that's not something you're going to want to hear.
I totally agree with you on that. Not only is it inappropriate to try to tell somebody exactly how long they have to grieve, again, grief is so dependent on the relationship. And with some relationships, we can move forward fairly quickly, but other times you can really be traumatized by what went on, and it just takes a while. It takes a while to make a next step. It takes a while to be able to figure out how to put one foot in front of the other. It takes a while. I mean, your life changes so much that you might have to change jobs. You might have to change your friend group. All kinds of things happen because of a loss. And so, for you to try to assess how long a person can grieve puts you in a position of not recognizing their pain or recognizing, as Sister Carter said, their progress. And it takes a while.
Right.
So, we would love to be able to say in 12 months, but I can't do that. I would say this: if in 2 to 3 years or so you're feeling exactly the pain and the trauma that you felt on the day that that person passed away, that might be an opportunity for you to say that I need someone to help me journey through this much more closely. And perhaps this is a time to get someone professional to just be with you through the process to help you get a breakthrough from what's keeping you from moving forward at all. As Sister Carter talked about earlier, you might be stuck in grief. And we don't want people to be stuck in grief. We want them to progress through grief at their pace. So if, no change, then you might want to get support. but no one can tell you how long you will grieve and how it should look. We just want to support you. If you see that you're not making progress, it's a good time to get support.
That's true.
And can I add something else, Sister and Brother Bing?
Sure.
Mhm.
I don't think that we've given sufficient attention to the fact that many times people are grieving something other than the death of a loved one. People can, especially during this pandemic, grieve the loss of jobs, grieve the loss of their actual property, grieve the loss of people who they love and have relationships with who actually died of COVID. But some people have had to move into different homes or even become homeless. That
Mhm.
can create grieving that even the person who's experiencing it is unaware of. Um,
Mhm.
Children who miss their classmates because they haven't been able to go to school and miss their teachers who many times are like a second mother or father to them. They can grieve that and we can miss it because it's not death. You see what I'm saying? So
Hmm.
Hmm.
if we had more time, we would be able to
Hmm.
delve into that, but I didn't want to neglect to bring that up.
And don't forget animals and how important that is for some people's lives, And if
Mhm.
you're not a pet lover, please don't discount the person who is, because that matters to the life and livelihood of people who love pets.
Mhm. Mhm. That is so very true.
Hmm. Hmm.
We had a question that came in the chat, and it talked a little bit about. It was a comment and a question, but it said that as we know, African American families or Black families, we don't seek professional help. A lot of feelings are kept within. A lot of feelings are kept within. So, how do we break the stigma?
It's important to normalize or to recognize that there's a lot of things we didn't
Mhm.
use as African Americans in the past, including technology. But
Mhm.
we're learning that there is nothing wrong with going to the doctor. If you drop something on your foot, you're going to go get some help. And we have to
That's
remind
right.
each other that if what's hurting
Mhm.
is your heart, you need to get that
Mhm.
support. And there are people who are there to support you as you process your hurts. And recognize that there's nothing wrong with that. Just like there's nothing wrong with getting help. You go to the grocery store because you don't grow all the food you need. So you go
Right.
where the help is. And so we have to remind
Mhm.
ourselves over and over again, we have access to that. I mean, through work programs, EAPs, and all that. And so
Mhm.
use those benefits. They're there for a reason. Don't let everybody
Yeah.
else get all the benefits and you don't take advantage of what is there for you.
Mhm. Mhm.
And those of
Yes.
us who are in this type of ministry need
Mhm.
to never give up, to always
Mhm.
rely on diverse ways of making
Mhm.
people comfortable with seeking help and
Mhm.
expressing their emotions. One thing that we stress in Grief Share is that everything's confidential. What we say
Mhm.
in that group setting or on our phone calls is confidential. And all
Mhm.
of our members respect that and abide by
Mhm.
it and appreciate it. Also, there are various ways of getting information to people. And I think Cass made reference to the technology. We've passed out flyers at church. We've
Mhm.
had look, you can do commercials or you can contact funeral homes and get support from them. But a lot of the people who participate in the faith ministries ministry come by referral
Mhm.
because someone that they love and who loved them made them
Mhm.
aware that it's safe to come to that environment. And sometimes
Mhm.
they've volunteered to come along, and they have. That's why we
Mhm.
know so many people in Alaska. But um, there, you just can't give up. You even I mean, we've done 13-week series where we only had 2 people. And we've had other 13-week series when we had 10. But we don't give up. We just celebrate the fact that the Lord is using us and making us available to people who need it. Just as you all are using your platform and your ministry to make people aware of what we do. Sometimes people just don't know.
Mhm. Mhm. And I love that you said that they can bring people with them. So you do open it up if someone has a support person
Absolutely.
that comes along with them, they can come. Okay.
Absolutely.
And we'll even give them a workbook. If when people are able, we ask them
Mhm.
to contribute the actual cost of the workbook, which is only $15. But if that creates any kind of issue for anyone, we don't let that stand in our way. We hand them their book, they put their name on it, and we keep it moving. And the same thing for their guests. If they don't want to come every week, but they want to be able to see what that person is being involved in, then they're welcome to a workbook too. And
Awesome.
Pastor supports us in that.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, that's important because I often think about the work that you do in the grief relief ministry, and I think about the work that we're involved in with my state job and my wife's job with the Columbus City Schools. And at the end of the day, if we're able to have these programs and adjust or influence one person's mindset, in my mind, we've done our job. Now, we'd love to have hundreds of people show up, but sometimes it just ain't going to be that. If we're able to influence one person, then we've done what God had us to do. And I really believe that in my heart. So, yeah. So I really appreciate, like you said, if it's just 2 folks, that's 2 more folks that didn't have it before. And that's very important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Reverend Cass, what are a few self-care tips that you have for people that are grieving?
Well, when you initially start out, we have an acronym that we use that is DEAR, DEER. Drink, eat well, exercise, and get rest. Um, your body has a shock that happens to it, and you begin to perform very differently than before, and you have all these emotional and physiological responses. And so we start out with the basics. Make sure that you're drinking plenty of water. I didn't say Coca-Cola. Plenty of water. Most of us would drink some coffee and say we got it for a day, but no, really cleanse your system with water. Eat healthy. Get exercise. Go for a walk. Get out of the house for a moment. Change your environment and get rest. You know, our emotions do all kind of stuff. Our bodies change. Our hearts rhythms change. You need rest. And so as much as you can get sleep, get some sleep. And those are ways to just start out to process and move through grief. Keep it simple. Don't try to do it lots of big things right away. Keep it simple. Take it day by day.
Day by day, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Sister Carter, did you have anything you wanted to add?
That answer was pretty complete for me.
It was. It was. All right. So the final question that we will ask is how can people connect with the Grief Relief Ministry if they need additional support?
Which one of us do you want?
Either
Oh,
one,
I'll
Sister
take it.
Carter. Oh, okay,
Okay.
Reverend Cass.
Um, a couple ways you can connect with us. If you go through our church, we will get that referral. So if you got onto faithministry.church/connect and you let someone know you're interested in getting support, we will receive that referral. Additionally, if you did www.griefshare.org, there is a place where you can look up by location, by zip code, where you want to get support. And of course, you can put in our zip code and you'll see us there. And finally, We have a conference call every week, so we can get you that conference call number. We'll be able to put that on the church website, so you can join us on our conference call. We prefer that you let us know you're going to come, but you can certainly get on the conference call and join us and say, "I'm here," and we'll just start with you from there. So we'll make sure you can get that conference call number and the access. And please join us, because it is open for all of us who just want that continuous support.
That is awesome. So as you heard, those three options, you can either reach out using the conference call number. You can go to the griefshare.org website and punch in your zip code, and you can get the information there on local resources. Or you can go to faithministries.church/connect and let folks know what's going on, and our church members will connect with you. So many ways to get connected to our resources. So at this time, we want to thank you both, Sister Carter, Reverend Cass. Thank you both for joining us tonight, giving us all this great information. This was a wonderful conversation. Just thank you again for everything you did tonight. Thank you for being a part of this tonight.
Yes, I would
Thank
definitely
you for
say.
having me.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to share.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And so we are ticking down in our time, but we understand that this conversation is a tough conversation to have and tough information, because we're all in different places emotionally. And so we want to end with the mindfulness moment. And so we are going to do a breathing exercise. Us educators, we like to give exercises for people. So we want to start with the 5-finger breathing exercise, and we're going to practice it, and then we'll take 1 minute. It's a mindfulness minute. So we'll take 1 minute to practice, but I really want to model it for you so that you can see. And the reason that we're going to do the 5-finger is breathing exercise is because if you're not used to mindfulness, it's really hard. Your mind will go somewhere else and you have to bring it back. So being able to focus on what we're going to do with our hand, it will help you focus in on this moment right now and what you're doing with your breathing. So with your hand, if you can see my hand, okay, we are going to trace our hand. And so starting with your finger, we'll go to your thumb. And as you go up, you will inhale and fill your lungs real good. Inhale, and you'll pause at the top of your finger, and then you'll exhale all of that out, and you'll pause at the bottom. We're going to inhale again and pause, and we're going to exhale. And we'll do one more time before we put our 1 minute of music on. So we'll inhale, we'll pause, and we'll exhale. All right, so we're going to have you practice this mindfulness moment. And if you don't trace your fingers, just do some deep breathing so that we can end on a positive note after this conversation that we've had. So Mike, if you don't mind playing. All right. Well, thank you for taking that mindfulness moment with us. Hopefully, you had just a moment to do some deep breathing, and you can definitely use that as you may feel your anxiety coming up, or if you're going through grief, again, your emotions can be all over the place. And so just taking a moment, you can do that at work, you can do that sitting in your car, you can do that at any moment to just bring yourself back and to gather yourself. So hopefully you can take that away with you.
Yeah, and I'll say that even going through the exercise just now, even in this moment, I think, this is being our first time doing this. There's a little bit of tenseness I think we're more comfortable now. But even as I did that exercise, I noticed I took advantage of thinking about where my body was and how I felt tense. And it helped me to relax even in that moment. So it's really important to do those deep breathing exercises. I know a lot of times the clients that I work with, they initially think it's kind of corny, but then once we walk through it, they're totally receptive to it and they're really appreciative in terms of how they feel after. So I'm glad that Seneca was able to find the 5-finger breathing technique and share that with you all. Again, we've come to the end of our hour, but again, we really want to thank our panelists, Reverend Cass and Sister Carter. Again, thank you so much for being on this call.
Yes, and we also want to thank Reverend Salon Wise and Mike McGee, who are in the background doing all kinds of technical things, and also Miss Brandell Johnson, and she knows exactly why we're thanking her.
Yes, and we also want to thank Dr. and Dr. Wise for making mental health a priority. And so we look forward to you all joining us again for the next opportunity for this. It will actually be the third Thursday of April, which the date is April 16th. We look forward to you all joining us again at 7 p.m. So thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate this opportunity.
All right. Thank you so much.